Okay, in yesterday's lesson, we were multiplying binomials. We were doing the distributive property twice. Also, we were used the acronym FOIL, first, outer, inner, lasts, which leads you through the distributive property twice. All of the problems today could be solved in the same way, but we're going to learn some shortcuts for some special products of binomials, and if you learn these, they will help you get to the answer or the solution faster. So let's just look and see how this works. Next slide. We had something like this yesterday. So if we were to work it out the way we did yesterday, we would do the distributive property twice, or FOIL. We would multiply x times x, which is x squared, which is the first terms. We would do x times 4, which is the outer terms. We would do 4 times x, which were the inner terms, and 4 times 4, which were the outer terms. And then in the center, we identified like terms that we had to combine, which would be 8x. But notice that our like terms today are going to be the same term twice. So instead of going through that process, it would make sense that we could just figure out what the middle term is and then double it. So we're going to look at that right here. It's going to be looking at the middle term and doubling it. That's why this works. So when you have a binomial squared, we can use the special product down here. Let me show you how it works. It means that you're going to take the first term and you're going to square it. So you're going to go x times x, which is x squared. You're going to take the last term and square it. So you would have 4 times 4 is 16. In the center, you have something called 2ab. What that means is you're going to look at the constants or coefficients, any numbers that you see up here, and you're going to multiply them together. We have the invisible 1 and a 4. 4 times 1 is 4, but we're going to double it because we would have 4 twice. So when we double that, that would be 8. And then we bring down the variables, and it would just be 8x, 4. So we double the first term. We square the first term. We square the last term. We multiply the numbers that are in here and double it for the center. We're going to practice that a few times here. So it's this thing down here. Square the first term, square the last term, and in the center you're going to double after you've done the multiplication. So this is how it works. First, we're going to square the first term, which is basically 3x times 3x, which is 9x squared. We're going to square the last term, which is 2y times 2y, which of course is 4y squared. In the center, we look for whatever constants or coefficients we have. We have a 2 times 3. We multiply them together, which is 6. But then we want to double it because we would have 6xy plus 6xy if we were using the FOIL method. So that would be 12xy, a positive 12xy. We're going to keep practicing this. It just takes practice to get used to this shortcut. Okay, again, you're going to square the first term. 4 times 4 is 16. You're going to do s squared times s squared, which is s to the 4th. In the center, you have a 4 and an invisible 1, which is 4. You double it, which would be 8. So we have plus 8. Bring down the variable, s squared. And that's your answer. If you get used to it, it goes pretty fast. Practicing again. Square the first time. X times x is x squared. Square the last term, which is a plus 36. You have a 1 times 6, which is 6. We double it, and that would be 12. Bring down the x. X squared plus 12x plus 36. Practicing again. Square 5a, which is 5a times 5a, which of course is 25a squared. Square the last term, which is b squared. We have a 5 times a 1, which is 5. We double that, and it would be 10ab. So your answer is 25a squared plus 10ab plus b squared. Now we're going to look at a binomial. It's the same thing except, notice right here, instead of an addition sign, we have a subtraction sign. The process is going to be the same. The only thing that happens is that the sign that ends up right here, instead of an addition sign, a plus sign, it's going to be a minus or subtraction sign. Let me show you why that is true. If we are using the distributive property, and do it the long way, and we multiply x times x, that's x squared. X times negative 5 is a negative 5x. Negative 5x in the center there. And negative 5 times negative 5 is a positive 25. So notice here we're multiplying two negatives and we get a positive. So we're going to have a positive sign right here. But in the center, you're adding together two negative terms. And when we add two negative terms, you get a negative. That is why right here we're going to have a negative sign. Process is the same. We're going to square the first term. So that'll be x times x, which is x squared. Now we have a negative 5 times a negative 5, which of course is a positive 25 when you multiply two negatives together. We have an invisible 1 and a negative 5, which is negative 5 doubled is a negative 10x. So your final answer would be x squared minus 10x plus 25. Okay, practicing again, we double it. 6a times 6a would be 36a squared. Negative 1 times negative 1 is a positive 1. We have a 6 times a negative 1, which is negative 6. We double it, it would be negative 12a. So your final answer is 36a squared minus 12a plus 1. Practicing again, 4c squared would be 16c squared. Negative 3d times negative 3d is a positive 9d squared. We have a 4 and a negative 3. When we multiply those together, we get a negative 12, but we want to double it. It will be a negative 24c. First term, square it, would be x squared. Negative 7 times negative 7 is a positive 49. We have a 1 times a negative 7, which is negative 7. When doubled, is a negative 14x. So we're squaring the first term, squaring the last term, doubling the product of the numbers, and there's going to be a subtraction sign right there. Practicing again, 3b squared is, or 3b squared is 9b squared. Negative 2c times negative 2c is a positive 4c squared. We have 3 times negative 2, which is negative 6. When doubled, is a negative 12bc. Okay, this is the last one. This time we have two binomials. They're going to have the same terms in both binomials, but one is going to be addition, one of them is going to be subtraction. Now, if we were to do this the long way, like we did yesterday, let's just see what happens and see how this shortcut works. If we did x times x, that would be x squared. X times negative 6 is a negative 6x. The inner terms right here, we have a positive 6x. And when we do our last terms, it's a negative 36 because you're multiplying a positive and a negative, and you get a negative. Here in the center, you will notice negative 6x plus a positive 6x are opposites. They become 0. So the middle terms are going to disappear. So the only thing left is that you have to square the first term and square the last term, and or you multiply the last terms. Sorry, when you multiply the last terms, you're going to get a negative number. So here we go. You just have to go x times x is x squared. 6 times negative 6 is a negative 36. And you're finished because the middle terms cancel each other out. This right here would be a positive 6x, and these two would be a negative 6x. So they're gone. It becomes 0. Okay, so let's practice that. Two binomials, same terms. One is positive, one is negative. All we have to do is square the a term. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th. And then we have a negative 2y and a positive 2y, so it's a negative 4y squared. Practicing again. Two binomials, same terms, different signs. 7 times 7 is 49. N times negative n is a negative n squared, and you're finished. What we're doing right here is we're creating the difference. Difference means a subtraction problem of two perfect squares. 49 is a perfect square, and n squared is a perfect square. And this is going to be important when we get to factoring in the next chapter, this difference of two perfect squares. Okay, again, we have two binomials, same terms, different sides. 2b times 2b is 4b squared. 4c times negative 4c is a negative 16c squared, and you're finished. Again, everything up there is a perfect square. 4b squared, 16, and c squared are all perfect squares. It's the difference of two perfect squares. 9 times 9 is 81. 3t times negative 3t is a negative 9t squared. So when you learn these shortcuts, look how much faster that goes than going through the entire FOIL process or the distributive property twice. Here's a summary of what we just did. This was the first one we learned right down here. We had a binomial that has an addition sign, being squared. You square the first term, square the second term, multiply the numbers, double them for the center. This was the second one that we learned. Again, you're going to square the A term, square the B term. This is going to be subtraction because you're going to multiply the numbers together and double it. This was the third one that we learned. The center terms BA and negative BA are going to cancel each other out. So you just square the first term, square the second term, and it's going to be the difference of two perfect squares. Hope this helps you to do your assignment today. As you practice these, try to learn the shortcuts to make it go faster.